I think we're going to live in a world where there are going to be hundreds of millions of billions of different AI agents, eventually probably more AI agents than there are people in the world. A lot of what we're focused on is giving every creator and every small business the ability to create AI agents for themselves, making it so that every person on our platforms can create their own AI agents that they want to interact with. And if you think about it, these are just huge spaces, right? So there are hundreds of millions of small businesses in the world. And one of the things I think is really important is basically making it so with a relatively small amount of work, a business can basically, a few taps, stand up an AI agent for themselves that can do customer support, sales, communicate with all their people, all their customers. I think that every business in the future, just like they have an email address and a website and a social media presence today, I think every business is going to have an AI agent that their customers can talk to in the future.
Prospects. Then the sales team has more time to book calls, which translates directly to more opportunities for revenue. In HR, a hiring agent will pre-screen resumes, prioritizing them based on your job descriptions, so your hiring team can spend more time prepping and holding interviews. And in accounting, you can use an agent to process invoices directly into your accounting software without requiring any manual data entry. Agents are a new way of working with technology, one that augments human work with the speed and scale of intelligent automation. With this new technology or way of working, you can start looking at your processes and identifying where you can reduce time, manual labor, and find new opportunities for growth.
Okay, so that was a little bit about AI agents, and I'm going to be absolutely honest with everybody. I have no sympathy, no tears are going to be shed for anyone that in this era is complaining that their business is not thriving, and yet they are not using AI. They're not using the free tools that are available with a really low learning curve to get up and running. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about AI, specifically ChatGPT. I'll be showing you some prompts and telling you a little bit about prompt engineering. And I have a really special guest today. I'm excited to have Mohammed. Mohammed is literally a rocket science. You know how we say it's not rocket science? This man is actually a rocket science. So Mohammed is a seasoned startup consultant, entrepreneur, and he launched his very first business at the age of 17 with a master's in theoretical physics. He is a published author and a certified rocket scientist, having contributed to the European Space Agency's JUICE mission. Now, he's dedicated his time now to empowering founders. Mohammed helps entrepreneurs ideate, strategize, scale, fundraise, and exit their startups. He's on a mission to make entrepreneurship accessible. So I'm going to introduce Mohammed. We'll say a few words, and then I'll get into the slideshow, and we'll be talking about ChatGPT. Mohammed, I know there was a little bit of confusion. I apologize, but it's really good to have you here.
It's very good to be here, Anthony. Thank you for having me. As you mentioned, there was a slight confusion with the date and timing of the actual show of the podcast, but I'm here now, and I guess we can continue.
All right, we're looking forward to hearing from you and you sharing some hints and tips. And I'll be asking you some questions that people can get to know you a little bit better. And then they can also find out more about your business and how to get in contact with you. So the thing about AI is one of those things that is kind of a catch-all phrase for everything. Sometimes it's not artificial and it's not actually that intelligent, but one of the tools that is available is ChatGPT. Now, I talk a lot about ChatGPT, and in I think it was my second book, Business Mastery for Startups and Side Hustlers, we have a whole chapter where we're talking about utilizing AI. So If you don't know what ChatGPT is a platform that can give you access to some artificial intelligence. There's other platforms. The reason why I speak a lot about ChatGPT is because it was the first platform that I was exposed to, and it's the one that I know the most about. But a lot of the information can be interchanged with the other platforms. I have a book called Easy ChatGPT Prompts for Startups and Side Hustlers. It's a non-technical startup guide, and it talks a little bit about my journey and how my brother-in-law Gareth introduced me to AI and ChatGPT. I'm going to share a few tips that can help you get your game up with ChatGPT. So we use a process called prompt engineering. So I say, if you don't ask, you don't get. And if you don't ask good questions, then you don't get good outputs. So prompt engineering is the process of just asking better questions and formatting those questions in a way that you can get the very best outputs. Now, there's different ways that people can explain it, but I'll break it down. So one of the things that you want to do when you're creating a prompt or you're asking for information from ChatGPT is you want to let the ChatGPT know what the role is. So for example, act as a business consultant with 30 years experience. So the role of the ChatGPT is to act as a business consultant, so it knows what it's doing. Explain the most common mistakes new entrepreneurs make and how to avoid them. So if you were to ask that question, it's quite specific. It lets the AI know the role that it's taking in that specific task. The next one is the task. So you're telling the AI, you're telling ChatGPT what you want it to do. So, for example, create a step-by-step guide for starting a consulting business with no upfront investment. Now, these are just some guide or sample prompts. You can change these things out. But what's important, you've now given the AI a role and you've given it a task. The next thing that you want to look at is the tone and style. So the tone and style, an example would be write a LinkedIn post in a motivational tone. You could say in a professional tone or in a humorous tone. So you're telling the AI what tone you want it to have. So it's write a LinkedIn post in a motivational tone for aspiring entrepreneurs about why they shouldn't fear failure when starting a business. There's a saying that that fear will stop you from starting. And then if you want to continue, sometimes you don't feel motivated. And this is one of the things, by using this prompt or asking this question, it can give you some tools to get over that fear of failure. The next one would be format. So you're telling the AI how you want it formatted. So in this example, it says list. So the output that you're going to get will be a list. So list the top 5 most profitable business ideas for 2024, 2025, 2026, whatever year, and explain why they are in demand. If you notice, in each of these prompts, it's quite specific. I find that when people complain about ChatGPT, it's because they're not asking good questions, or they're asking really broad and general questions instead of asking more specific questions that they can get a better output. And I'm going to say that there's another one, which is reference and style, or an example. So you're telling or giving the AI a reference point of what you want the output to look like. So write a business startup checklist in the style of a Forbes article. So Forbes magazine has a specific style. So you're telling the AI you want it in that style. Like if you were writing a music article, you might say in the format of Rolling Stone magazine. You can use anything as an example, but the key is you're now giving it an example. And remember, the first output that you get from the prompt may not be exactly what you want. So you can ask it to iterate, but the starting point in using ChatGPT and most AI is prompt engineering. So I'm showing you your format, your role, your style. These different things are going to help you put together better prompts that you can get better outputs. So here's a prompt template. So this is kind of a catch-all just to convince you about how good the technology is. You could say, act as a insert role. So act as a finance expert, act as a coach, act as a whatever. So you're giving it a role. Write a blog, write a post, write a email, fill in the blank, about topic for specific audience. Now, depending on what you're doing, your writing style might be more advanced. It might be more technical because you're talking to someone like Muhammad, or it might be more conversational because you're speaking to someone like me. The other thing that you can do is ask for the tone, as we mentioned. Keep it under word count. So if you want it to be brief, tell it to be brief. Include specific details, end with call to action. That's a key point. Making sure that in the things, depending on what you're doing, that you're actually stating that you want a call to action. So your call to action might be to click on a link. Your call to action might be to visit a website, but you're giving the AI enough detail, enough specificity to be able to get the type of outcomes that you want. Now, if you're a business owner, one of the best tools that I have ever found is a platform called AppSumo. If you're starting or running a business, you'll find that there's lots of apps out there. And before you know it, you're subscribing to this, you're subscribing to that. It's $9.99 here, $12.99 there. Before you know it, it's hundreds of dollars that you're spending per month. AppSumo is a platform for startups and side hustlers where you have access to new technology, new apps. Some things may work, some things don't. It doesn't matter because there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. I would say probably 80% of the apps that I use in my business, including the app that I'm using right now, which is wave.video, I got on AppSumo. Now, it's priced in dollars, so you will find that maybe the item might cost $29, $39, $49. There's different tiers. There's different levels to the pricing that you'll have. But the great thing about it is you pay once. So you buy it and then you own it. And some of the good apps on there, you'll find that they just continue to evolve. One of the apps that I use is called Publer. And that's what I use for all of my social media posting and my social media dashboard. It allows me to schedule my social media posts. So there's a lot of people that think that I spend a lot of time on social media. Here's a tip. I don't. What I do is I use ChatGPT to help me structure what I'm saying. I then ask it to rewrite it for the different platforms. I schedule it in Publer, and there you go. So these are just some tips to get you up and running with ChatGPT. As I said, if you're not using ChatGPT in your business, if you're hesitant, if you're making excuses, you are setting yourself up for failure because the company, your competition that is using it is going to have a superpower that you don't have. And as I said, just check out AppSumo. It's a great platform. And if you want to get your business up and running without paying a branding expert and then paying someone else to be your coach and paying someone else to help you with your CRM, please check out the book, Business Mastery for Startups and Side Hustlers. I go through all of the pillars of starting and running a business. I help you run a business that is scalable, sustainable, repeatable, and franchisable. I'm here to help startups that are -6 months to 12 months in business make their first £100,000. And I partner with people like Muhammad and Avail to give you access to people that have run businesses, have started businesses, and have practical advice that they can share with you. And you can also be a part of our startup and side hustlers community. I'm going to be bringing in Mohammed right now, and we will be talking about his journey and finding out a little bit more about this whole rocket science thing. So stay tuned as we go through this section of the show. And if you have questions, please put your questions in the chat. Mohammed, once again, it's really good to have you here. And I see you've matched my background. How did we do this? I have to take you off mute. There you go.
Yeah, no, Anthony, once again, it's great to be here. To be honest, with the background, I did it manually.
Okay.
I just trying to go with the overall aesthetic that you've got going.
Okay, I didn't. You know what? I shouldn't have pointed that out. People would have thought we were in the same office. See, I just told on myself. So I know, depending on when people are watching this, they might this might not be a timely reference. But as of today, did you see what Elon Musk did in retrieving those astronauts that were stranded up in? I think they were at the space station or something.
Yes. So they were in the space station for, I think, the past 9 months, when they were only supposed to be there for about 2 weeks' time.
Yeah.
I know they're safely back on US soil now. So
Yes.
they're back home. It took a long time. There was a lot of people who were involved in actually making sure they were back home safely. But what did Elon do?
So SpaceX partnered with NASA to get that done. So that, to me, that's just incredible to think that there's a phrase in the common vernacular when something is difficult, or when someone's making it more difficult than it is. They're like, oh, it's not rocket science. But it's a pleasure to have someone who is actually a rocket scientist. So if you could tell me a little bit more about how you contributed to the European Space Agency.
Definitely. No, I'd love to talk about that. So, well, my background, as you mentioned, is in theoretical physics. So when I was in university, I was working on the four science, in that quantum physics, working developing new kinds of medical scans, so on and so forth. As part of that journey, I got the opportunity to work as as a programmer for the JUICE mission. Now, what
exactly is the JUICE mission?
So it stands for Jupiter Icy Moons Exploration. That's what JUICE stands for.
Okay.
So essentially, Jupiter, as you may know, is one of the planets in our solar system, right?
Yeah.
And unlike us, unlike the Earth, which only has one moon, they've got way too many. Okay, they've got 30 plus moons in Jupiter. I say they because, well, we don't really know if there's any aliens there yet. But
we don't know that yet.
We don't. So there's about 30 plus moons, and some of them are big enough to have their own kind of magnetic fields. What I was involved in was the actual modeling of those moons, to see the kind of interactions that they have with each other, to make sure that the European Space Agency's JUICE mission, which is a satellite that they're sending, they've actually sent it now, it's on its way there. So essentially what I was doing was modeling the path of that satellite and making sure that it doesn't just reach Jupiter and crash into one of its moons. So that's what I was involved in. It was an eye opener, really, because this is around 2021.
Yeah.
So 2021 when I was working on this, and the satellite actually launched last year. So in 2024 it launched. Now, one of the big differences between rocket science, between those, that side of the world, the academia, and entrepreneurship, which would be, what we do, is the speed of execution. Now, the satellite launched last year. I worked on it in 2021. Anthony, I would like you to take a guess at it. How long do you think it's going to take before it actually reaches Jupiter?
Oh gosh, see, now you put me on the spot. I would say 4 months.
It takes about 4 months to actually reach somewhere around our moon, So essentially what what made me take this switch is the speed of execution. It's going to take about 10 years for the satellite to actually get to Jupiter, take the readings, and then it's going to take even longer for us to get that data back to see what it actually looks like there.
So 10 years. So like in relative to starting and running a business, like you couldn't do that in the business world. We barely have 10 minutes to get things done, to take things to market. So I understand that correlation in saying that you've switched because of the speed in which we have to operate. But just you talking about that stuff, it demonstrates that you are a disciplined person, to be able to actually have the fortitude to work on these type of projects. So you now apply some of that brain power towards entrepreneurs.
Yeah, no, as Elon Musk once said, everything in life can actually be broken down into first principles, which is something that we look at in physics, right? It's very simple. It's 2 plus 2, and then you add more dimensions to it, you add more numbers to it, and before you know it, it's something which is complex and huge. It's an empire, right?
Yeah.
Which is what most entrepreneurs are looking to build. Now, academia, rocket science, it takes a lot of patience, right? I'm not that person who can work on something and wait more than 10 years in radio silence to understand if what we did was actually right, if the data that we're getting from space actually matches what our theoretical understanding of the subject was, which is why I made that switch to entrepreneurship. Because here, as you mentioned, with some things you can execute within 10 minutes, especially now with things like ChatGPT, which which I'm a huge advocate for, by the way. Those with tools such as ChatGPT, you can actually take your business idea and go from 0 to 1 within a span of a few months. You don't have to wait 10 years to actually understand what you're doing, where you're going. And I think that's the beauty of entrepreneurship.
Yeah. What I find, and as I said in the introduction, and I don't know if it's sad, I don't know what the word is, but it is frustrating when I speak to business owners who, are saying that they're struggling, or they're saying that they're having issues with cash flow. And then you try to introduce the concept, even just the concept of saying, well, did you know there's this free tool that you can speak to, or just type a question in, and it can give you answers. It can help you streamline what you're doing. And they're just like, no, or I'm not a technical person. What do you say to somebody like that?
Well, anybody can make the excuse of not being a technical person if they haven't actually tried what they're working with. Right now, I'm not somebody who comes from a very strong programming background. As I mentioned, I was more into physics. I was more into the pure sciences, right?
Yeah.
But with a tool like ChatGPT, it actually levels the playing field. Anybody can come from any background in life and become more or less an expert on the subject within a span of a few months using tools like ChatGPT, using platforms like YouTube for educating themselves, getting involved in the right communities, reading the correct books, and so on and so forth. So not having a technical background is not really an excuse in 2025.
Yeah.
You have tools such as ChatGPT, such as Gemini, which can take your idea and turn it into a foolproof business case. You can't really make the excuse of not having no programming knowledge and not being able to create a website or a landing page, because there's tools out there which will actually do that for you with an easy prompt, right? You give it a few sentences and it actually does everything for you. So we're living in exciting times, I would say.
I have found that some of the people that are the most opposed to it are academics in some senses, and creatives who know that it's actually going to challenge the service or product that they provide. So you have some people who are creative, so web designers, graphic designers, photographers, videographers. You have people that work in those creative fields that I think part of what it is self-worth, isn't it? If you've studied this thing for years or even decades and that's become your identity, and then you can have someone like Anthony now that can just come in and understand prompt engineering and be able to deliver things as good as, or in some cases, even better than what you could do in a shorter period of time. I can understand why, they want to oppose it. But my thing is, why not use the wisdom and knowledge that you've gained over those years or decades, couple that with the AI to be able to be better than someone that just knows the AI?
No, exactly. It's not meant to replace you.
Yeah.
It's meant to augment your current practices, right? It's a tool that's been built for advancing human knowledge, advancing the way we work, and actually boosting your productivity, right?
Yeah.
I see a lot of people complaining, right? It's making us redundant, it's taking our jobs, it's doing this, it's doing that. But I would say, it's only really doing that because you're letting it.
Yeah.
If you're not catching up, if you're not actually making yourself competitive with how the world is working now, you're only asking to be left behind.
Yeah. And the thing that I say to people is the most important thing that we have is time. And if you can use it effectively, it actually gives you time back. And because family to me is very important, I would rather have a tool that I can use for free or very cheaply. I'd rather have a tool that can free up time that I can then spend more time with my family. So it's a win-win, just fighting against it. You're going to lose anyway, right? I opened up my Chat GPT a couple days ago and I noticed that I have access to Sora. Have you done anything with Sora and the videos and video creation in Chat GPT?
So not myself. I have seen a lot of examples. So I've seen people, test around with it. There's quite a few people who are actually bringing to life old pictures as well as, periods of time where we don't have any visuals from. So
Yes.
recently I actually saw somebody doing, they created a video using Sora of, it was titled "What It Was Like to Live as a Roman Soldier." And it actually had visuals of what it was like to be part of the Roman army, of the Roman legions, what the daily practices were like, what their food used to look like, and so on and so forth.
Wow.
And something like that would actually cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars a few years ago.
Yes.
And now you've got a tool which anybody can access for free and just visualize things, right? So yeah, no, it's amazing, really. But as anybody who's educated about AI, machine learning, general AI as we call it, would say, it's something that you need to be wary of as well. So
Yeah.
there's positives to it, there's pros to it, but then at the same time, there's things, these things can actually hallucinate sometimes. They can give
Yes.
you false information,
Yeah.
and you need to be there to actually check that.
Yeah.
You mentioned that academics, creative people are actually against it. Now, we can talk about them one by one because I think both of them have a slightly different
Reason
point of
for
view.
it. Yeah.
Exactly. Academics say that it's something which boosts or actually encourages plagiarism,
Yes.
right? Which is true to a certain sense, because even in my line of business, I've seen people who, give a few prompts to ChatGPT, try and generate a business plan there. They don't go through the effort of actually reasoning with the, with the AI. They don't
Yeah.
go through the process of checking if the strategies that it has given are actually viable, if they're actually applicable to their business, and they just follow it with, with a blindfold.
Yes.
So something like that is, that actually has a negative effect, because you're listening to something which you haven't spent time actually confirming,
Yeah. Yeah.
for lack of a better word. Creatives, on the other hand, say it kind of reduces the creative powers. It's taking away from that human, what's the word I'm looking for? That human nature that we have of being
Yeah.
creative, of coming up with ideas. And at the end of the day, it's also plagiarizing a lot of their work, right? Because it's been trained on their work, which at the end of the day, they weren't paid for by OpenAI.
Yeah.
So, they're both valid points, and we need to be wary of, the negative effects of these AIs at the same time. But that doesn't mean you start avoiding them altogether.
Yeah.
When motor vehicles first came out, when cars became mainstream, um, of course they took away jobs, stables, the horse industry, as you used to call it.
Yes.
It was a huge industry around the world, right? There were a lot of people who were employed in that industry, and within a few years it all just went away.
Yeah.
At that time, I believe they had the same kind of debate where, of course, there's benefits of having a car, but you can be involved in an accident, or it can just break down in the middle of a journey.
Yeah.
But as we saw then, I think we're going to see it again now.
Yeah.
Some people are going to be made redundant. Some jobs are going to go away,
And
but
then new ones will be created.
and then new ones would be created, of course. So yeah, I think it's a win-win for society at the end of the day.
So you touched on something that is a good segue into talking more about your business and what your business does. So
Mhm.
I'm not here saying let's just use ChatGPT to replace everyone. And the what you're saying about the hallucinating is it's important to understand that, because if you don't understand your field, then the outputs that you get, you cannot then discern if the outputs, as you said, are viable. So just tell me a little bit about Avail, what you do, and how you support business owners.
Yeah, no, definitely, I would love to. So, Aveo is on a mission to make entrepreneurship accessible to everyone, regardless of whether you were born to investment banking parents in Manhattan, or if you were born to farmers in India, right? We want to make entrepreneurship, financial freedom accessible to everyone. And we believe consulting is a very good segue into that, because without a mentor, without somebody to actually guide you through the way, it actually becomes very difficult. What we do is we help entrepreneurs ideate, strategize, scale, and eventually fundraise or exit for their businesses. What that means is, if you're in the early stages, if you've got an idea, if you're in that negative 6 months, 6 months to launching your business, how we can actually help you is conduct feasibility studies for you, conduct market research, help you validate your idea. So in a way, actually ensure that the idea, the business that you're going to pursue is actually worth your time, right? There's a demand for what you're going to supply.
Yeah, and
Um,
I'm glad you say that, because one of the things that I find with a lot of people is they go and talk to their friends and their family, and you have
mhm.
well-intentioned friends and family members that aren't business owners, don't understand business, or just want to encourage or support an idea. So you'll have an idea and you'll be passionate about it, and then that friend or family member is like, "Yes, follow your passion." But you need people like you to actually validate that, to actually be able to look at the data, because the data is what will inform you. So that first stage, and having a company like Avail is vital. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, no, 100%. You know, every social circle has, I mean, most people in any social circle would be very supportive of you and your ideas, right? They wouldn't come to you with a negative point of view, try and point out the gaps in your idea, in what you're looking to do. They would more or less support you. They would push you to actually pursue the idea, which of course is again good and bad, because you need that motivation sometimes, you need that inspiration, but at the same time you need to ensure that the idea you're pursuing is actually viable, and sometimes your friends and family aren't the best people to talk to about that. There's a very scientific process to validating an idea. Y Combinator, a lot of the other big names in the industry, in the startup ecosystem, have come up with more or less a framework for how you ensure that there's a market for what your product or service is, to validate your your business idea, whether it's a technical platform or whether you're importing something from China and selling it in a market which doesn't have that product. So yeah, it's not that different from rocket science, but I would say it's a lot simpler because you can take those exact scientific principles, apply them to your idea, and ensure that there's an actual market for it.
Okay, so once you've done that, what's the next step? How would you help a startup?
So once you've validated your idea, once you've come up with an idea, once you know that there's a demand for it, the next step is to actually strategize, right? It's to come up with a plan on how you can take this, in the next 6 months, in the next year, to to a viable business that's enough to sustain yourself and potentially hire a few people so you can grow the business. What we do there is we help entrepreneurs come up with a business plan. Now, business plans are living, breathing documents. As you may know yourself, they have a lot of sections which require regular updates. What we're doing there is we're building an AI powered platform that is eventually going to allow entrepreneurs to to engage with their plan, to go back to it every couple of weeks, every couple of months, to make sure they're on the right track. Help them ensure that they're looking into all of their competitors, looking at their strategies, coming up with a solid go-to-market strategy, how they're actually going to take their product and scale it. And along with that, there's a lot of other aspects to it, right? A hiring plan, a financial plan, so on and so forth. So yeah, that's another thing that we actually help out entrepreneurs with at that stage, once they've decided that they want to pursue an idea and are now looking to strategize.
And the strategy part, I find that people don't find that to be the sexy part. So in talking to a lot of startups, they get stuck on the, can you look at my logo? Here's 3 examples of a logo. Which one do you think is best? Or, doing this, raise a hand if you like this logo or if you like that logo. But the strategizing and the planning and putting pen to paper, so to speak, is the bit that isn't sexy. So when you're working with clients, how do you handle that opposition that you might get to that part of the process?
To be honest, there's a lot of educating, right? There's a lot of convincing. There's a lot of trying to show the value in what you're doing. I'll be honest with you, a lot of the times that we actually help people out with their business plans, putting pen to paper, helping them out with their strategy, is when they actually need it. It's 2025. Entrepreneurship is mainstream now. It's the sexy thing, working for yourself, making your own job. But people don't realize that one of the first steps is actually sitting down and writing a business plan.
Yeah.
Most people only get to it when they really need to, when a potential partner asks for it, or when they need to go to the bank to get a bank loan and the banker says they need to look at a business plan, or when they're applying to an accelerator, an incubator, something along those lines, and it's one of the requirements there. So unfortunately, people don't really see the value in business plans, and that is again one of the missions that we're working on. Educating entrepreneurs, educating startups to actually see the value, understand that this is something which is crucial. It's going to more or less be a bible for your business. You're going to keep coming back to it, and yeah, that's I guess one of the struggles. So yeah, you've hit it on the nail there. People don't really find it to be sexy.
Yeah, and as I always say, people don't plan to fail; they fail to plan. And I think in some cases, the reason why people don't want to go through the process of writing it down is because it makes them accountable not only to themselves, but it makes them accountable to this thing that they put on paper. So if they then don't achieve the things that they put on this, when I keep saying paper, but when they don't achieve these things, they actually have to be accountable to someone. Whereas if you've never put it down and you missed the mark, what was the mark to begin with? So you've now
Exactly.
taken people from validating the idea to coming up with a business plan. What's the next step?
Okay, so let's take out all of the creative bits, right? Let's forget the logo, the branding, the website, because all of that I personally believe is supplementary for
Yes.
you
Yes.
know
Say
for
that again. You have to say that again.
I personally believe, and after working with almost 500 startups over the past few years, I believe that branding, logos, websites, these are all supplementary things, right? They are not what brings money, that they're not the main revenue drivers for the business. Unless you're in a very, very creative industry, unless you're starting up a fashion brand,
Yes.
sure, spend a lot of time on your logo. Yeah, come up with your colors. But if you're coming up with a SaaS platform, if you're starting a consulting agency, if you're a lot of these industries, you don't really need to spend a lot of time on your logo. So yeah, no, I would say people need to actually look further than that. You need to stop wasting time on your logo, your business name, things along those lines. Your gut instinct, the very first thing that you do, is usually the best. And once you've got the money, once you've got a business, you can then spend, tens of thousands of dollars with creative people
Yeah.
who
We
can come
will
up with a,
gladly take your money.
yeah.
We'll gladly take your money to yeah. I find that that's where people get, so people accelerate to that point and then get stuck on logo, website. And I do websites. So I had a web design company and I stopped doing it because what I found was people rush you to build their website. They don't have the content, they don't have the images, they don't really know what they're trying to accomplish. In essence, they're just creating an online brochure, but they're calling it a website. Then, 3 months later, they still haven't given you the information to complete it. You get it up and running. 7 months later, they've forgotten about it or they're not doing anything. But that seems to be where most small businesses, startups, side hustlers, they get stuck in that mode. And that's one of the reasons why we started the business mastery course, to say, look, those things are needed to a degree, but if you don't have a CRM, if you don't have a business plan, if you haven't validated your idea, if you don't have, a process in which you're going to run your business, having a great logo means nothing. It means
Exactly.
absolutely nothing. So you were saying that that's supplemental. So what would you say is the important part after you get to you have your business plan in place?
Yeah. So once you've got your business plan in place, the next step is to actually understand what you need to get that business going, right? At the end of the business plan, the very final thing that we do is a financial forecast, right? It's a financial plan. It breaks down how much money you need to get going, how much you're going to be spending on a regular basis, what your monthly operating expenses are going to be, and how long is it actually going to take for you to become profitable. In doing so, we help the entrepreneur identify how much capital is needed in the business. As an example, if you're setting up a small business, a small restaurant, you might be in need of $100,000, $200,000 to get that going. On the other hand, if you're setting up an AI powered SaaS platform, you might need a couple million. But the main goal is, once we've helped them identify it, we help them source that funding. It can come from a range of different places. It could come from your friends and family. It could come from the bank, or it could come from the big venture capital funds that you have around the world, right? Yeah, in that situation, what we help them with is their investor collateral. We help them set up a data room that includes a pitch deck. Of course, the business plan is an important part of it. Brochures, investor teasers, etc. Once those documents are created, once everything is in place, we help them come up with a strategy, a plan on how to actually approach these people, whether that includes applying to different programs, whether that includes going to your bank, or emailing people who actively invest in your industry, who are involved in your industry and would like to partner up with an up and coming startup. So yeah, the next stage after a business plan, after the strategy part, is the fundraising part.
And you support with that. So I think that's the bit that most people want to hear is, how can I get money? So people come up with an idea, they go to friends and family, their friends and family tell them that's a great idea. They get stuck on the logo and the website, and then they say, how can I get money? So you would actually take people through the entire process, but you do it in a more pragmatic, structured way, in a way that when they do get to that end point and they're looking for venture capitalists or angel investors, etc., they actually have something that is tested, something that when they're asked the difficult questions, they can answer those questions and demonstrate the viability of the plan, that they can successfully get that money.
100%, 100%. Now, this comes in various different shapes and forms, right? If you're, let's say, a technology startup, more often than not, in this day and age, you can actually have a minimum viable product. You can have an MVP ready within a few months, right? Or at least the mock-up for it. You can have your plan, you can have your, what your main idea is, a website, maybe some traction, a list of people who are interested. That is more often than not sufficient for getting investors interested, getting that conversation started. Following that, in the early stages, they really and truly invest in the person. They don't invest in the idea because pivoting is more common than you might think. For people who are not aware of what that is, a pivot is when you actually go, you're working on an idea, you've got your strategy in place. 6 months down the line, you realize that you're not getting as much traction as you need. There's maybe a slightly different angle that you should start pursuing, and you pivot your startup into that direction. So that is more common than you may think, which is why in the early stages, angel investors, VC firms, they all invest into a person. And as part of that, what you need to do is you need to showcase your story in the best way possible, right? Entrepreneurship is a lot of storytelling. Fundraising especially is something which is more storytelling than anything else.
Yes.
Try and my advice to entrepreneurs would be to try and see what you can achieve with the minimum amount of capital that you have in place, whether that means setting up a website, whether that means getting a list of people who have signed up, who are interested in your product and have signed up for your newsletter or something along those lines. Try and see whatever you can do, get as much traction as you can before you actually start pursuing investors. A lot of people just have an idea, they don't even have a plan, and the first thing they want is $1 million to work on that.
Yeah.
And nobody in their right mind would actually give you that, especially in this economy. So one of the main things that a startup founder needs to do is to take a deep, long look at what they're building, what they're doing, what their strengths are, what part of their story people could relate to, and spin it off in that way. So
I like what you said, and I think it bears repeating that in the initial stages, people are investing in the person. So having a good story is very important, and the ability to pivot. And one of the ways that you're going to be able to determine when to pivot is by having good data. So the data is something you can look at and say, this is working, I'm going to keep doing this. This is not working, maybe I either need to iterate or stop doing it. But without the data, you're just walking around blindly, really. So having good systems, having a CRM, having something that you can capture that information is going to be very important. So as we wind up, just tell people that are watching this how they can get in touch with you, and just a brief, quick, how Avail can help their business.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, yeah, essentially what we're doing, what we're helping people do is build legacies, not just businesses. We help entrepreneurs all the way from vision to execution, making the whole entrepreneurship process seamless, right? You're in uncharted waters. The best thing you can do is talk to somebody who's been through that journey before, who has, helped other people on that journey, whether that help relates to your strategy, whether that relates to your fundraising journey, or whether that relates to validating your idea and ensuring that you're going in the right direction. The best way to reach out to us would potentially be through our website, avail.co.uk. I'm sure we can have some form of a banner or something going on here. But yeah, no, our main goal, as I mentioned early on in this video, is to make entrepreneurship accessible to as many people as possible. And as part of that mission, we work with people on, on a case-by-case basis. We don't do cookie-cutter solutions. Every business is unique. Every business has unique needs. And as such, we work with them to create a bespoke plan, a bespoke package, which we work with them on. And of course, when it comes to that, we charge our clients based on what stage they're at as well. So if you're a serial entrepreneur, if within the first 5 minutes of me talking to you, you tell me, hey, I've had these many businesses and we've exited businesses, we're going to be charging you a lot more than somebody who's a first-time founder who's bootstrapping their business and is in the early stages of their entrepreneurship journey.
That's good to know. And I really have enjoyed our conversation. And I thank you with all of the scheduling issues for being here. And I think we had an informative conversation. Startups and side hustlers need access to information. They need access to people that aren't just trying to sell them a course or just trying to get them in a sales funnel, but people that will have real conversations, share information, talk about real life issues. Because if you have been in business for 20 years and you've been a multi-millionaire for the last 15 years, your experience is different than someone starting a business today. As we said at the very beginning, the exciting point about starting a business today is we have access to AI and AI tools and agents and things of that nature. So it's great. But we need to be talking to each other. We need to be supporting each other and have a network of like-minded people where we can bounce ideas off each other. And it's not going to just be, I have this idea and you're going to tell me just follow your passion, but you're going to actually look at it, scrutinize it, and tell me why it might fail. That way I can be prepared. It's been really good having you, Mohammed. And your information will be in the description. And as we wind down, I know that a lot of the people that watch the show are looking for access to information without having to pay expensive coaches. So my name is Anthony Lindsay, and my book, Business Mastery for Startups and Side Hustlers, is available on Amazon. We go through all the pillars of starting a business that is scalable, sustainable, repeatable, and franchisable. One of the best tools you can use nowadays is ChatGPT. If you're not using ChatGPT, give it a try. I do have a book, Easy ChatGPT Prompts for Startups and Side Hustlers. It will get you up and running quickly. It's a non-technical guide to getting up and running with ChatGPT. It has some great prompts that can be used immediately to get your business up and running. This is Startups and Side Hustlers, and each month we talk to founders, we talk to startups and side hustlers to share information to get your business to the point that you make your first 100,000.
Thanks for calling Leonardo Hotel. How can I help you today?
Hi there. I'm an AI agent calling on behalf of Boris Starkov. He's looking for a hotel for his wedding. Is your hotel available for weddings?
Oh, hello there. I'm actually an AI assistant too. What a pleasant surprise. Before we continue, would you like to switch to Gibber link mode for more efficient communication?